They call it legacy operations. I call it babysitting the apocalypse in a windowless sub-basement. The air down here on the B2 level of the bank's Manhattan headquarters always smells the same. A distinct cocktail of ozone, stale vending machine coffee, and the quiet, humming despair of hardware that should have been decommissioned when the Twin Towers were still standing. I'm Linda. I'm 52 years old. I have a pack of Marlboro Reds waiting for me in my glove box like a lover I'm trying to quit. And I am the only reason 27 million distinct financial transactions happen every night between New York, London, and Tokyo. You'd think the people upstairs, the ones with the Italian suits and the teeth that cost more than my first car, would appreciate that. You'd be wrong. To them, I'm just the grumpy woman in the cardigan who refuses to use Slack because I'm too busy keeping their Ferraris fueled with digital gasoline. If you're the kind of person who enjoys watching corporate Titanic crashes in slow motion, do me a favor and hit subscribe. It helps the team, and honestly, it's cheaper than therapy for me. But back to the grime. Most people think banking is about money. It's not. It's about data flowing through pipes that are rusted, leaking, and held together by digital duct tape. My job is the plumber, but not the kind that fixes your toilet. I'm the kind of plumber who stands knee-deep in radioactive sludge, holding a valve shut with one hand while typing command lines with the other, praying the pressure doesn't blow my arm off. I was sitting at my desk, a heavy, gray laminate monstrosity that survived the 2008 crash better than the economy did, watching a junior engineer named Kevin try to navigate a reconciliation loop I wrote in 1999. Kevin is a sweet kid. He wears ironic t-shirts and drinks kombucha. He looks at my code the way an archaeologist looks at hieroglyphics, with a mix of awe and total confusion. Linda, Kevin stammered, his fingers hovering over his mechanical keyboard like he was afraid it might bite him. The batch script for the Asian markets. It's throwing a syntax error I've never seen. It says error 44, ghost in the machine. I didn't even look up from my crossword puzzle. It's not a syntax error, Kevin. It's a timing delay. The Singapore server farm has a handshake protocol that lags by exactly 300 milliseconds because the physical cable routing in their basement takes a weird turn around a structural pillar. I put that error message in there to remind myself to pause the script manually if the lag exceeds half a second. Just hit F5 and wait. Kevin hit F5. The screen flashed green. The terror drained from his face. How do you remember that? I don't remember it, Kevin. I feel it in my knees. When it rains in Singapore, my arthritis flares up in the server's lag. It's symbiosis. That was the ecosystem. Delicate, ancient, functioning. Then the door opened. You know how the pressure changes in a room when a hurricane blows a window out? That's what it felt like. But instead of wind, it was the overpowering scent of sandalwood, expensive ambition, and pure unadulterated bullshit. Enter Trent. Trent was our new CTO. He had been poached from some Silicon Valley unicorn that disrupted the dog-walking industry or some other nonsense. He was 30-something, wore a suit that was too tight in the ankles, and had a smile that didn't reach his eyes, a shark in loafers. He looked around my domain, my B2 kingdom of humming server racks and tangle wire nests, and his upper lip curled just a fraction of an inch. He wasn't seeing the billions of dollars of infrastructure. He was seeing a museum exhibit. He was seeing something unsexy. He was seeing me. So Trent said, his voice echoing too loudly off the metal cabinets. "This is the engine room, huh?" I slowly capped my pen. I didn't stand up. I learned a long time ago that standing up for men like Trent just makes them think you're ready to take an order. We prefer the core, Trent, but sure, engine works. He walked over to the main mainframe terminal, a beast of machine we affectionately called Big Bertha. He tapped the monitor with a manicured fingernail. Green text on a black screen. Very retro. Is this actually live, or is this just for monitoring? That terminal controls the swift operational bridge, I said, my voice flat. If you spill your matcha latte on it, the European economy takes a sick day. Trent laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound like shaking a box of rocks. Funny, you're Linda, right? The legacy operations manager? Lead engineer, I corrected. Operations manager implies I manage people. I manage disasters. He nodded, looking past me, scanning the room. Right. Well, Linda, I'm doing a tour of the infrastructure. We're looking to modernize, pivot to the cloud, microservices, agile workflows, bring this bank into the 21st century. I felt a twitch in my left eye. We are in the 21st century, Trent. And the reason we're still solvent is because this retro system actually works. It doesn't need a pivot, it needs respect and regular maintenance. He turned his gaze on me then. It wasn't friendly. It was the look a developer gives a line of code they intend to delete. Respect is great, Linda, but scalability is better. I've been looking at the metrics. The latency down here, it's embarrassing. We're losing milliseconds. In high-frequency trading, milliseconds are millions, and reliability is billions. I shot back. You can have it fast or you can have it right. This system reconciles accounts to the penny every single night across 14 currencies. It hasn't missed a beat in 27 years. You want to replace that with a cloud server hosted in Virginia that goes down every time someone trips over a cord at Amazon? Trent smiled again, that shark-like grin widening. I think you're underestimating what modern tech can do, Linda. You've been down here a long time, maybe Too long, you get attached to the old ways. It's natural. But we're not running a history museum. We're running a bank. He started walking toward the exit, his heels clicking sharply on the linoleum. At the door, he paused and looked back at Kevin, who was trying to merge into his chair. Nice work, kid, Trent said, ignoring me completely. We'll get you some real tools soon. Get you off this dinosaur tech. Then he left. The silence rushed back in, but it felt different now. The hum of the servers sounded less like a purr and more like a growl. I looked at Kevin. He looked terrified. Called it a dinosaur, Kevin whispered. I reached for my bag and pulled out my thermos. Dinosaurs ruled the Earth for 160 million years, Kevin. Humans have barely managed 200,000. He thinks he's an asteroid, but he's just a tourist. But deep down in the pit of my stomach where the anxiety usually sat, I felt something shift. It wasn't fear. I was too old for fear. It was a cold, hard realization. Trent wasn't just an annoyance. He was an existential threat, not just to my job, but to the stability of the entire financial web we were weaving down here in the dark. I took a sip of my coffee. It was lukewarm and bitter, just the way I like it. Kevin, I said softly, pull up the activity logs for the last 6 months. I want to see everything Trent has accessed since he got his badge. Why? Kevin asked. Because I said, staring at the blinking green cursor on Big Bertha, if he wants a war, he's going to find out that the dinosaurs have really big teeth. This was the beginning. I could smell it. The ozone in the room seemed to sharpen, the static electricity raising the hair on my arms. Trent thought he could just walk in here with his buzzwords and dismantle the bones of this institution. He had no idea. He saw code. I saw arteries. He saw hardware. I saw organs. And if you try to rip out an organ without knowing what it does, the patient doesn't just get sick. The patient bleeds out. I lit a metaphorical cigarette in my mind because actual smoking down here would trigger the halon gas system and kill us all, and cracked my knuckles. Let's see what you've got, Wonder Boy, I muttered. The first casualty of any corporate war is communication. You stop getting the optional meeting invites, then the mandatory ones, then you stop getting the emails altogether. 2 weeks after Trent's little tour of the dungeon, I was walking past the main conference room on the 40th floor, the sky deck, as they called it. I was only up there because the vending machine in the basement had finally given up the ghost, and I needed caffeine to function. The sky deck is all glass walls, polished chrome, and people who look like they've never had a carbohydrate in their lives. Through the glass, I saw them. Trent, the CFO, the head of trading, and a flock of junior developers who looked like they were barely out of puberty. They were gathered around a massive smartboard, and there, written in red digital ink, was a diagram. It was my system. Well, it was a cartoon version of my system. It looked like a child's drawing of a nuclear reactor. Boxes labeled legacy bloat and obsolete logic were crossed out with big, aggressive X's. Arrows pointed to a fluffy white cloud labeled the future. I stood there, holding my lukewarm cafeteria coffee, feeling a cold heat spread through my chest. It wasn't anger. Anger is hot and messy. This was clarity. It was the feeling you get when you realize the strange noise in your car engine isn't a loose belt, but the transmission grinding itself into dust. One of the interns, a girl named Sarah who had actually helped debug a Python script last month, looked up and saw me. She froze. She nudged the guy next to her. Trent turned around. He didn't look embarrassed. He didn't look guilty. He smiled and waved, a little shoo-shoo motion with his hand, like I was the cleaning lady interrupting a board meeting. I didn't wave back. I turned and walked to the elevator, my heels sinking into the plush carpet that cost more per square foot than my house. Back in the basement, I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I did what I've done for 27 years. I dug. Kevin, I said, sitting down at my desk. Get me into the shared drive for the Project Phoenix initiative. Kevin looked up from his monitor, eyes wide. I don't have access, Linda. It's restricted to the strategy team. Kevin, I said, voice low and dangerous. I am the root admin for every server in this building. I have access to God's email if he uses our Exchange server. Get me in. 2 minutes later, I was reading the documentation. And it was worse than I thought. It wasn't just a modernization plan. It was an execution order. They were planning to decommission Process X. Now, let me explain Process X to you in terms that don't require a computer science degree. Imagine the bank is a human body. The trading desk is the mouth, eating money. The accounts are the stomach. Process X is the autonomic nervous system. It's the thing that tells the heart to beat and the lungs to breathe while the brain is sleeping. It's a middleware layer I wrote in 2002 to bridge the gap between the old COBOL mainframes and the new Java-based web interfaces. It handles the overnight reconciliation. When the US markets close and the Asian markets open, there's a weird limbo period where money exists in 2 places at once due to time zones and settlement delays. Process X freezes the accounts for exactly 1.4 seconds, verifies the funds, and then releases them. If you remove Process X, the system doesn't know the money has moved. It tries to spend the same dollar twice. It's called a double spend attack, and in the crypto world, it destroys currencies. In the banking world, it's federal prison time and global collapse. Trent's documentation called Process X redundant latency. Redundant, I whispered, reading the PDF on my screen. He thinks it's a bug. He thinks the delay is a bug. I read further. They plan to bypass the legacy bottleneck by routing transfers directly through a new API. an API that had no concept of the 1.4-second settlement gap. I sat back in my chair, the leather creaking under my weight. The air in the room felt thinner. "What is it?" Kevin asked. He could sense the shift. The kid was learning. "They're going to cut the brake lines, Kevin," I said, staring at the glowing screen. "They think the brakes are slowing down the car, so they're just cutting them. We have to tell them," Kevin said, standing up. "We have to go up there and explain it." I looked at the ceiling, imagining the meeting going on 40 floors above us. I imagined walking into that room, explaining the intricacies of transactional integrity to Trent. I imagined his shark smile. I imagined him saying, "Thanks, Linda, but we need people who can scale." "No," I said. "We don't tell them yet." "Why not?" "Because they won't listen. They have to see the wall before they believe in the crash." I started typing. Not code, notes. I created a new folder on my personal encrypted drive. I named it the autopsy. I spent the next 4 hours documenting exactly what would happen. I pulled the logs from 2008 when a glitch in the old system caused a similar error. I pulled the patch notes where I fixed it. I traced the dependencies. I mapped the entire neural network of the bank's transfer system. By 6 p.m., I had a dossier that proved mathematically that Trent's plan was suicide. But I knew it wasn't enough. Facts don't matter to men like Trent. Narratives matter. And his narrative was new as good, old as bad. I was old, therefore I was bad. I packed up my bag. I put on my coat, a heavy wool trench that had seen better days. "Kevin," I said on my way out, "do not fix anything this week unless it is literally on fire. If a server lags, let it lag. If a report is late, let it be late." "But why?" "Because," I said, pausing at the door, "they need to feel the weight of what we carry. If we keep making it look easy, they'll think it's useless." I walked out into the cool evening air of Manhattan. The city was alive, lights blinking, cars honking. A chaotic, beautiful mess. It worked because thousands of invisible people like me kept the traffic lights timed and the subways running. Trent wanted to fire the invisible people. I lit a cigarette, the flame of the lighter illuminating my face for a brief second in the darkening street. I took a deep drag, the smoke filling my lungs, familiar and toxic. "All right, Trent," I whispered to the glass tower looming behind me. "You want to drive the car? Here are the keys, but don't come crying to me when you hit the tree." I went home, poured myself a glass of cheap Merlot, and waited. The strategy session was over. The war was just beginning. And I had the ultimate weapon. I knew how the world ended. He didn't even know it was fragile. The request came down on a Tuesday morning, flagged with high importance red exclamation points. Subject, urgent. Legacy knowledge transfer / documentation audit from Trend Test, CTO to Linda M. Legacy Ops. Linda, per our modernization initiative. You need full documentation on all legacy dependencies by EOW. We're moving to the migration phase next month. Please upload all schematics, code comments, and logic flows to the new Confluence page. We need to democratize this data. No more silos. Democratize, I scoffed, reading the email. He means he wants to loot the temple before he burns it down. It was the classic move. They couldn't fire me yet because they didn't know what I did. So they were trying to download my brain into a wiki page. Once the wiki was full, Linda would be empty. And an empty Linda is an unemployed Linda. "What are you going to do?" Kevin asked. He was eating a bag of artisanal kale chips that smelled like feet. "I'm going to give him exactly what he asked for," I said, cracking my knuckles. "He wants the code, he gets the code. He wants the schematics, he gets the schematics, but won't that help him replace you?" I turned to Kevin and gave him a grim smile. "Kevin, imagine you give someone the blueprints to a Boeing 747. Does that mean they can fly it? Does that mean they know what that weird rattling sound in the landing gear means at 30,000 feet? I spent the next 3 days in a fugue state of malicious compliance. I wrote documentation, pages and pages of it. I was technically accurate, extremely accurate. System A connects to database B via port 8080. That is a true statement. What I didn't write down, what I carefully, surgically omitted was the why. I didn't write, System A connects to database B via port 8080, but only if the temperature in the server room is below 72 degrees, otherwise the thermal throttle kicks in and you have to route through port 8081 manually, or the whole thing deadlocks. I gave him the map. I didn't tell him about the dragons. As I worked, I kept an eye on the central code repository, Git. It's like a history book for code. It records who wrote what line and when. For 20 years, my username, Linda Legacy, was all over the core banking kernel. Then, around Wednesday afternoon, I saw it. Commit ID 8F9A22 author, Trent team lead message, refactoring legacy codebase, cleaning up headers. I clicked on the change log. I hadn't changed the code. They had just reformatted it. They added some spaces, changed some variable names from account hold val to acc hold value to make it look modern. But in doing so, they wiped the history. The line that said last edited by Linda Legacy in 2004 was gone, replaced by last edited by Trent team lead in 2024. It was a digital assassination. They were erasing me. I watched my name disappear from the files, file by file, like Marty McFly's siblings fading from that photograph. It hurt. I'm not going to lie. I'm a cynic, I'm tired, and I'm bitter, but I'm also proud. I built this. I kept the lights on through the 2008 subprime crisis while these kids were still in diapers. I patched the Y2K bug while the rest of the world was partying like it was 1999. And now, some 25-year-old with a degree in user experience was pasting his name over my work. I stopped typing. I looked at the documentation I was writing. It was too helpful. Even without the why, it was too good. I highlighted the section on the overnight settlement bridge, the critical piece, the heart of the beast. Delete. I rewrote it. The overnight settlement bridge handles routine data transfer. It is a standard SQL query. Standard, I whispered. Good luck with that. I wasn't just hiding the landmines anymore. I was polishing them so they looked like stepping stones. Thursday came, I uploaded the documents. The file size was impressive. 400 pages of technical jargon, flowcharts, and diagrams. It looked like a masterpiece of transparency. To the untrained eye, it was the keys to the kingdom. To me, it was a suicide note addressed to the bank's solvency. Trent replied 10 minutes later. Thanks, Linda. I'll take it from here. Great work on the handover. Handover. The word hung in the air like a bad smell. I stood up and walked over to the main server rack. The lights were blinking, steady, rhythmic green, thump, 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 the heartbeat of the bank. I reached out and touched the cold metal of the casing. I'm sorry, old girl, I murmured to the machine. They don't love you like I do, they're going to hurt you. Kevin was watching me. He looked scared. He'd seen the Git history too. He knew what was happening. Linda, he said, they're pushing the new code to the staging environment on Monday. The refactored version. I know, I said, if they push that to production, without the middleware, chaos, I finished for him. Should we stop them? I looked at Kevin. I looked at the coffee stain on the carpet. I looked at the picture of my cat taped to my monitor. I thought about the 401k matching they had cut last year. I thought about Trent's shark smile. I thought about my name being erased from the history books. No, Kevin, I said, my voice ice cold. We don't stop them, we let them learn, but the clients, the transfers, are not my problem anymore, I said. According to the new documentation, I'm just a legacy operator. And legacy operators don't understand the cloud, right? I sat back down. I opened a solitaire window. Trent wants to be the captain, I said, moving a red king onto a black. Let's let him steer the ship. I had mapped out the disaster. I knew exactly where the iceberg was. I knew exactly how fast they were going. And I had just handed the captain a map where the iceberg was labeled open water. It was cruel. It was petty. It was professional malpractice. And it felt absolutely fantastic. Friday, the day of the all-hands operations sync. It's a conference call that involves 40 people, 35 of whom have no business being there. It's mostly managers congratulating each other on alignment and bandwidth. I usually put it on mute and listen to true crime podcasts, but today I was listening. Today was the go/no-go decision for Monday's rollout. The voice on the speakerphone was Trent's. He sounded pumped. He sounded like a high school quarterback before the homecoming game. All right, team, Trent boomed, his voice crackling slightly over the Polycom unit that sat in the center of my desk like a plastic spider. We've reviewed the legacy docs provided by Linda. Thanks for that, by the way, and the refactoring is looking solid. The dev team has successfully mirrored the database structure in the new cloud environment. We are looking green for a Monday morning cutover of the settlement layer. The room went silent. Well, the virtual room. I leaned forward. I pressed the unmute button. It made a loud beep that probably echoed in the sleek conference room upstairs. Trent, this is Linda, I said. My voice was calm, measured, the voice of a flight attendant telling you to brace for impact. Go ahead, Linda, Trent said, a hint of impatience in his tone. He wanted a victory lap, not a Q&A. I'm looking at the staging logs, I said, staring at the screen where Kevin had pulled up the test results. I see you've successfully mirrored the database, but I'm not seeing the latency emulation for the Asian market handoff. The new API is processing requests instantly. Exactly, Trent interrupted. That's the point, Linda. We eliminated the lag. We're real-time now. No more waiting for your ghosts to clear. Trent, I said, choosing my words with the precision of a bomb defusal technician. The lag isn't a bug. It's a reconciliation window. If you process instantly, before the foreign exchange desk confirms the rate, you're going to execute transfers at the previous day's closing price. If the yen swings more than 0.5% over the weekend, we're going to be eating the difference on about $4 billion worth of trades. There was a pause, a long, heavy pause. For a second, I thought he might listen. I thought maybe, just maybe, the sheer number 4 billion would penetrate his reality distortion field. Then, a chuckle. Linda, Trent said. The condescension dripped from the speakerphone like molasses. You're thinking in 1990s logic. The new Oracle feeds are live. We catch the rate changes in microseconds. We don't need a window, we have an algorithm. An algorithm that was tested on historical data, I countered. Not live market volatility. Look, Trent snapped, his patience gone. I know it's hard to let go. You built a system that worked for its time. Frankly, a script kid could code circles around your old batch files today. We're moving forward. The decision is made. Monday, 9:00 a.m., we flip the switch. A script kid. The insult hit me in the chest. I've spent weekends sleeping on the floor of this server room. I've missed birthdays, anniversaries, and one funeral to keep this bank running. I wrote the code that saved them from the flash crash of 2010. He compared me to a teenager in a hoodie copying code from Stack Overflow. I looked at Kevin. His jaw was on the floor. He looked at me, waiting for the explosion. Waiting for me to scream, to resign, to threaten. I smiled. It was a terrifying smile. It was the smile of a predator that has just stopped hunting and decided to simply wait for the prey to die of stupidity. Understood, Trent, I said into the phone. You're the CTO, it's your call. Just let me know when the circle's complete. Will do, Trent said, dismissing me. All right, moving on to the marketing updates. I muted the phone, I stood up. Kevin, yeah, go home, but it's only 2 p.m. Go home, Kevin, take the weekend off, turn off your phone, do not check your email, do not log in. Linda, what are you going to do? I walked over to the main console. I pulled up my personal admin script, the one called the janitor. It was a collection of automated patches, cron jobs, and error catchers that I had running in the background for years. It was the invisible safety net that caught all the mistakes the sloppy junior devs made. It was the thing that scrubbed the data, checked the dates, and paused the system when it got too hot. I'm going to do exactly what Trent wants, I said. I'm going to stop interfering. I'm going to let his superior code run without my obsolete crutches. Typed a command, sudo service janitor stop. The terminal prompted me, are you sure? Y/N, I didn't hesitate. I hit Y, then enter. A series of small green lights on the server rack flickered and went dark. The hum of the room changed pitch. It became slightly louder, slightly rougher. The safety rails were gone. I'm just letting the script kid drive, I said. I grabbed my purse. I grabbed my coat. I looked around the room one last time. See you Monday. Bring popcorn. I walked out of the building with a lightness in my step I hadn't felt in years. The weight was gone. It wasn't my bank anymore. It was Trent's bank. And Trent was about to find out that gravity is a very harsh mistress. The canary had stopped singing. Now the gas was filling the mine. Monday, 7:45 a.m. The office was buzzing with that specific Monday energy, half dread, half caffeine. People were talking about their weekends, their brunch spots, their kids' soccer games. They were oblivious. They were walking on the deck of the Titanic, complaining about the buffet, while I knew the iceberg was already in the hull. I sat at my desk in the basement. I didn't turn on my usual array of fix-it scripts. I didn't open the terminal windows I usually kept open to monitor the health of the database. Instead, I opened a single dashboard, global transaction volume, real time, and I made a cup of tea, Earl Grey, hot. Kevin came in at 8:15. He looked pale. He looked like he hadn't slept. Did you turn it back on? He whispered, putting his bag down. Turn what back on? I asked innocently, blowing on my tea. The janitor script, the safety net. Trent said our legacy tools were holding us back, Kevin. I wouldn't want to impede progress. Kevin swallowed hard. He pulled up his chair and logged in. Oh God, he muttered. The pre-market queue is already building up. New API isn't batching them. It's trying to push them all through at once. Scalability, I said, taking a sip. 8:30 a.m. The markets in London were closing their midday gap. The New York pre-market was heating up. On the dashboard, a line that was usually a gentle curve started to look like a jagged mountain range. Upstairs, I knew Trent and his team were in the war room. They were probably high-fiving. They were probably looking at their own dashboards, ones that showed CPU usage and cloud uptime. Those dashboards were green because the cloud was up. The servers were running. The problem wasn't hardware, it was logic. And logic doesn't show up on a CPU graph until it destroys the data. 8:45 a.m. The auto-purge scheduler, a nasty little utility that deletes orphan transaction records to save space, woke up. Normally, my scripts put a leash on this dog, telling it, down, boy. Wait until verification. Today, the dog was off the leash. I watched the log file scrolling on my secondary monitor. Deleting record ID, 994,822, success. Deleting record ID, 994,823, success. It's eating them, Kevin whispered, horror in his voice. The new system isn't tagging the pending transfers correctly, so the purge script thinks they're junk data. It's deleting live wire transfers. It's just cleaning up the environment, I said, very efficient. Linda, that's the payroll batch for a Fortune 500 company. Oops, I said, no emotion, just a flat observation. 8:55 a.m., my phone rang. It was the help desk manager. Hey Linda, we're getting a few tickets from the Asia Pac team. They say their end-of-day reconciliation numbers are off. Like, way off. Can you check the batch? I'm sorry, I said. Per the new directive, all legacy batch operations have been deprecated. You'll need to route that ticket to the cloud migration team. Trent is the point of contact, but they don't answer the phone. I guess they're busy scaling, I said and hung up. 9 a.m., opening bell on Wall Street, the floodgates opened. The volume on the dashboard spiked vertically. It went from a mountain range to a rocket launch. The new API, stripped of my bottleneck middleware, accepted every single connection request simultaneously. It was beautiful in a destructive way. It was like watching a dam burst. The system wasn't rejecting the traffic, it was swallowing it, and because the internal logic was broken, because the old guard checks were gone, it was processing garbage. Money was moving, but it was moving to nowhere. It was moving into the void. 9:02 a.m. The first alarms started, not the digital ones, the real ones. I heard shouting in the hallway. Kevin was gripping his desk so hard his knuckles were white. Linda, the queue is deadlocked. The database is locking rows faster than it can release them. It's going to seize. I checked my watch. Wait for it, I said. 9:03 a.m., total systemic cardiac arrest. The dashboard flatlined. The throughput dropped to 0, not a slow decline. A cliff, silence. For about 10 seconds, the basement was the quietest place on Earth. The hard drive stopped seeking. The fans spun down. The frantic blinking of the modem lights went solid red. Then chaos, my desk phone rang. Kevin's desk phone rang. The emergency red phone on the wall, which I had only heard ring twice in 20 years, started blaring like a fire truck. Upstairs, on the trading floor, screens were freezing. Billions of dollars in liquidity had just evaporated into the ether of a refactored cloud instance. I calmly reached out and unplugged my phone. "Tea's getting cold," I said. The countdown was over. The bomb had detonated, and I was the only one with the defusal kit, which I had conveniently left at home, or rather in my head. I sat back, crossed my arms, and waited for the inevitable sound of expensive Italian loafers running down the stairs. You know that sound in movies when a submarine hull breaches? That groaning, tearing metal sound before the water rushes in. That's what the bank sounded like at 9:04 a.m. It wasn't water, though. It was panic. It started as a murmur from the ceiling, the collective vibration of 300 traders slamming their fists onto their desks simultaneously on the floors above. Then came the stampede. Kevin was staring at his monitor, which was now just displaying a cascading waterfall of error codes. Error 503, deadlock detected. Transaction rollback failed, integrity violation. It's all failing, Kevin stammered. The retry loops are attacking the primary database. It's a DDoS attack, but we're doing it to ourselves. Self-inflicted wounds are always the hardest to treat, I noted, opening a bag of pretzels. The door to the server room burst open. It wasn't Trent yet. It was Mike from the treasury desk. Mike was a guy who usually looked like he'd just stepped out of a GQ photo shoot. Right now, he looked like he'd been chased by wolves. His tie was crooked and he was sweating through his shirt. "Linda," he screamed, bypassing pleasantries. "We can't clear the Fed wire. The interface is frozen. I have $400 million meant for the Deutsche Bank settlement stuck in pending. If that doesn't clear by 9:15, we trigger a liquidity default event." I looked at Mike. I liked Mike. He once bought me a muffin. "I'm sorry, Mike," I said, on my best customer service face. But the Fed wire interface was replaced this weekend. It's now part of the Phoenix cloud. You'll need to speak to the modernization team. I tried, Mike yelled. Their dashboard says all systems operational, but my screen is black. That's the beauty of the cloud, I said. It's always sunny up there, even when it's raining shit down here. Mike looked at the red lights on the server racks. "Can you fix it, please? We're bleeding out." "Don't have access anymore," I lied. "My permissions were revoked to improve security posture." "You need Trent." Mike let out a stream of expletives that would have made a sailor blush and ran back out the door, presumably to hunt Trent for sport. 9:10 a.m. The Asia teams were waking up to the nightmare. My email inbox, which I was watching on a side screen, was filling up at a rate of 50 messages per minute. Urgent, critical, stop, help. Frantic energy was delicious. For years, these people had ignored me. They had walked past my desk without a nod. They had cut my budget. They had rolled their eyes when I talked about risk. Now I was the most popular girl at the dance, but I wasn't dancing. I opened the internal chat logs for the dev team, the War Room channel. It was pure panic. "Trent, CTO, why is the latency 9,000 ms? Who pushed the commit?" "Dev lead, we didn't push anything. Database is rejecting the queries." "Trent, CTO, restart the instances. Spin up more nodes. Dev lead, we spun up 50 nodes. It's just making it worse. The locks are replicating." They were throwing gasoline on a fire thinking it was water. They were spinning up more servers to handle the load, but the problem wasn't load. The problem was that the database didn't know how to talk to the new code. Every new server just created more locked records. I could have told them that. I could have typed one command, rollback to snapshot 0800, and fixed it in 10 minutes, but I didn't. I watched the stock ticker for our bank, down 2%, down 4%. The news was leaking. Technical difficulties. 9:20 a.m. The door flew open again. This time it was the entourage. Trent, the CFO, the head of risk. Trent looked like he had aged 10 years in 20 minutes. His hair was messed up. His eyes were wild. The swagger was gone, replaced by the primal fear of a man watching his stock options turn to ash. "Linda," Trent gasped out of breath, We need access to the legacy bridge." I swiveled my chair around slowly. "The legacy bridge? But Trent, that's obsolete. It's a dinosaur. A script kid could code circles around it." "Stop it," he snapped, though his voice cracked. "The new system is failing. You need to route through the old middleware until we figure out the bug." "I can't do that," I said. "Why not?" the CFO demanded. He was a terrifying man named Marcus who usually scared me. Today, he just looked like a man who was about to lose his bonus. "Because," I said, pointing to the empty space on the rack where a cable used to be. "I decommissioned it. As per the memo on Friday, all legacy redundancies must be removed to ensure full adoption of the new platform." I pulled the plug. "Trent, literally." Trent stared at the empty port. He looked like he was going to vomit. "Plug it back in," Marcus roared. "It's not just a plug," I said, my voice dropping an octave, becoming hard as steel. The configuration files were wiped. The routing tables were purged. To bring that system back up, I would have to rebuild the entire logic layer from memory. Manually, the room went silent. The alarms were still blaring, but in that circle, there was only the sound of heavy breathing. "How long?" Trent asked. "Days," I said, "maybe weeks without documentation. And since you wiped the Git history." "It's a total rewrite. We don't have days," Marcus screamed. "We have minutes. The Fed is threatening to suspend our wire license." I shrugged. Then you better hope your script kids learn fast. I saw the realization hit Trent's eyes. He knew I hadn't actually wiped it. He knew I was holding the keys, but he couldn't prove it, and he couldn't fix it without me. He looked at me, and for the first time there was no arrogance, just desperation. Linda, he said, his voice trembling, please, it was a good start, but I wasn't done yet. They dragged me upstairs. Not literally, but the gravity of the situation pulled me out of the basement and into the executive war room on the 50th floor. View was spectacular. You could see the Statue of Liberty. She looked unbothered. Inside the room, it smelled of fear and dry erase markers. The massive screens on the wall were red, all red. A global map of the bank's operations looked like it had chickenpox. There were about 15 people in the room. Developers, VPs, PR crisis managers. They were all yelling into phones or typing furiously on laptops. When I walked in, the room quieted down. It was like the doctor walking into the waiting room to tell the family the surgery went wrong. Status, Marcus, the CFO, barked. He was pacing the length of the table. Trent was slumped in a Herman Miller chair, looking at a tablet. We tried to fail over to the backup data center in New Jersey, but what? Marcus demanded. But the backup was configured to mirror the live environment, Trent whispered. It replicated the error. New Jersey is dead too. Of course it was. Because they didn't understand that redundancy means having a different system, not a clone of the broken one. We are currently blind, the head of risk said, his face gray. We don't know who owns what. We have trades settling in Tokyo that we can't verify. If we don't get the ledger back online by 10 o'clock a.m., the cascade effect triggers default clauses in our counterparty contracts. We are looking at billions in liability, not to mention the reputational damage. We are done. Everyone looked at Trent. Trent looked at the table, then Marcus looked at me. Linda, Marcus said. His voice was different now. It wasn't the voice of a boss, it was the voice of a customer. Trent says you can't bring the old system back. Is that true? I walked to the whiteboard. I picked up a black marker. I ignored the millions of dollars of technology in the room and drew a simple square. This is the bank, I said. I drew a line coming out of it. This is the money. I drew a jagged line cutting the connection. This is Trent. There was a nervous shuffle in the room. The system isn't dead, I said, capping the marker. It's in a coma. The logic is confused because you fed it contradictory instructions. You told it to be fast and safe without the mechanism that ensures safety. Can you wake it up? Marcus asked. I can, I said. Trent's head snapped up. You said the files were wiped. I lied. Said simply, I'm a sysadmin, Trent. We never delete anything, we just hide it. A wave of relief washed over the room. I saw shoulders drop. I saw smiles start to form. They thought it was over. They thought the janitor was going to clean up the mess and they could go back to their lattes. Just tell us what to do, Marcus said, checking his watch. We have 20 minutes. I'm not telling you anything, I said. The relief vanished. Excuse me? Marcus stepped forward. Linda, this is insubordination. I am ordering you to fix this system. I laughed. It was a genuine, hearty laugh. Insubordination? Marcus, I'm an at-will employee in a legacy role that is slated for elimination next month. You can fire me. Go ahead. Fire me right now. Marcus froze. He knew he couldn't. If he fired me, the bank died. I don't work for you right now, I said, leaning against the mahogany table. Right now, I am an independent contractor. My services are in very high demand. This is blackmail, Trent hissed. No, Trent, I said, looking him dead in the eye. This is capitalism. Supply and demand. You have a demand, a functioning bank. I have the supply, the code. The price just went up. I looked around the room. I saw the fear. I saw the realization that their fancy titles and MBAs were useless against 27 years of spaghetti code and intimate knowledge of where the bodies were buried. You want the legacy system back? I asked. You want the dinosaur to save you? Yes, Marcus said through gritted teeth. What do you want? I pulled a yellow post-it note from my pocket. I had written it out while I was drinking my tea. I slapped it onto the whiteboard, right in the center of the square I had drawn. Let's talk numbers. The yellow post-it note looked comically small on the massive whiteboard, but everyone in the room leaned in to read it. Consulting fee, $10,000 and 0 cents per hour. Minimum 4 hours. Payment terms, immediate wire transfer. Prepaid $10,000 an hour. Trent sputtered. That's extortion you make. What? $80,000 a year. I made 85, I corrected him. But that was the employee Linda rate. That rate included benefits, a false sense of security, and the privilege of being ignored. The contractor Linda rate includes a premium for emergency recovery of a catastrophic failure caused by executive incompetence. This is ridiculous, Marcus, the CFO, fumed. We can't just wire a consultant $40,000 on the spot. There are procurement processes, vendor onboarding, compliance checks. I checked the digital clock on the wall. 9:42 a.m. The Asian market's close in 18 minutes, I said calmly. If the reconciliation isn't done by then, the Tokyo exchange will flag our trades as failed. Do you know what the penalty is for a failed settlement of this volume? It's usually about 0.5% of the total value. I did some mental math. On $4 billion, that's $20 million, plus the SEC fines, plus the lawsuit from the shareholders. I turned to Marcus. So, you can lose $20 million in 18 minutes, or you can pay me 40 grand right now. It's a simple ROI calculation, Marcus. I thought you guys loved those. Marcus looked at the clock. He looked at the red screens. He looked at me. He was sweating. He realized that I wasn't bluffing. He also realized that I was right. 40,000 was a rounding error compared to the disaster unfolding. Can you actually fix it? He asked, his voice low. In 18 minutes, I can fix it in 12, I said. Marcus pulled out his phone. He dialed a number, get me treasury. Yes, emergency override, I need a wire transfer pushed through immediately. Beneficiary, he looked at me. LLC is named Legacy Solutions, I said. I set it up last night. I hadn't, but I had a shell company from an old freelance gig years ago that was still active. Always be prepared. I gave him the routing number. Yes, 40,000. Immediate release. Override the flagged checks. Authorization code Alpha Zulu 9. He hung up. It's done. You'll see it in your account in 2 minutes. I'll wait for the confirmation, I said, folding my arms. We don't have time to wait, Trent yelled. We always have time for verification, I said. That's the lesson of the day, isn't it? 2 minutes passed. Agonizing, silent minutes. The phone in the center of the table beeped. Wire confirmed. I checked my banking app on my phone. There it was. $40,000. More than I used to make in 6 months, earned in the time it took to drink a cup of coffee. All right, I said. Move. I walked over to Trent's laptop. He scrambled out of the chair like it was on fire. I sat down. It was a nice laptop. MacBook Pro top specs. Shame the operator was defective. I opened the terminal. The text was white on black. First, I said, typing as I spoke. We kill the new API. Kill all -9 process Phoenix on the big screen. The jagged lines of the failing transactions flatlined to 0. Now, I said, we wake up the dead. I accessed the hidden partition where I kept the real system. The one I supposedly wiped. Mount/dev/SDA1/MNT/legacy service process X start. What are you doing? A junior dev asked, watching over my shoulder. I'm re-engaging the middleware, I said. I'm putting the brakes back on the car. I typed the command that would save their asses. A command that invoked the 1.4-second delay. /reconcile batch sh force ignore timestamp. I hit enter. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. The cursor blinked. The room held its breath. Then scrolling text, green text, connecting to Singapore, success, connecting to London, success, verifying ledger. Batch 1 cleared, batch 2 cleared. On the main wall, the red alerts started turning green. One by one, then in clusters. The queue is clearing. Someone shouted, the backlog is processing. But it's slow, Trent complained, watching the numbers tick up. It's not slow, I said, not looking up. It's careful. It's checking the money before it moves it. You're welcome. 9:56 a.m. All settlements confirmed. The head of risk breathed out, sounding like he was about to cry. We made the cutoff. The room erupted. People were cheering, high-fiving. Trent looked like he had just survived a firing squad. I stood up. I closed the terminal. Pleasure doing business with you, I said. Wait, Marcus said. You're not leaving? We need you to monitor the overnight cycle. My contract was for a minimum of 4 hours, I said. But the scope was fix the crash. Crash is fixed. I'm taking the rest of the day off. But what if it breaks again? Trent asked, panic creeping back into his voice. I smiled. Then I guess you'll have to hire me again. But the rate goes up for after-hours support. It's $15,000 an hour after 5 p.m. I walked toward the door. I felt 10 feet tall. Oh, and Trent? I said, pausing at the threshold. Yeah, don't delete the janitor script this time. He works cheaper than I do. I didn't go back to the basement. I didn't need to. I had my personal laptop in my bag, and I knew Kevin would handle the cleanup. I walked out of the building at 10:15 a.m. The sun was shining on Wall Street. Tourists were taking selfies with the charging bull. They had no idea that 20 minutes ago, the financial world had almost imploded because a man in a skinny suit thought he was smarter than a batch script written in 2002. I walked to a coffee shop, a nice one, not the vending machine. I ordered a latte, oat milk, expensive. I paid with the card linked to my new LLC account. The machine beeped, approved. It felt good. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Kevin. Kevin, you are a legend. Trent is literally shaking. They are putting Process X back into the permanent architecture documentation. They're calling it the Linda layer. I laughed. The Linda layer. A piece of code that does nothing but tell the machine to wait, to breathe, to think before it acts. A monument to patience in a world addicted to speed. I finished my coffee and walked to the subway. I wasn't going back tomorrow. I had already drafted my resignation letter. It was short. Dear Marcus, please accept this as my formal resignation, effective immediately. For future support inquiries, please contact Legacy Solutions LLC. Rates attached. Regards, Linda. I knew they would pay it. They had no choice. They could hire 10 new Trents, but none of them would know why the Singapore server lags when it rains. None of them would know that the database locks up if you run the payroll batch at the same time as the backup cycle. I had spent 27 years being invisible, being the legacy, the dinosaur. But here's the thing about dinosaurs. They were the apex predators for a reason. And here's the thing about legacy systems. They survive because they work. I got on the train. I found a seat. I put in my headphones. I wasn't an employee anymore. I was a consultant. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just keeping the lights on. I was owning the switch. As the train rattled into the tunnel, plunging us into darkness, I closed my eyes and smiled. The system was running. The money was safe. And Trent was probably staring at a green screen, terrified to touch a single key. We're all healed. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.